Union this week. As I mentioned, I'll be broadcasting from Saginaw, Michigan tomorrow as I go up there for some CNN State of the Union coverage. We'll be talking to some voters in Saginaw. And on Wednesday, I'll be back in Washington. We'll be broadcasting live from the National Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee office, the Ronald Reagan building. We'll have a number of U.S. senators coming through the show. I also want to highlight something else big that's going on this week, something coming from our good friend Dennis Prager. Dennis's latest book is called If There Is No God, The Battle Over Who Defines Good and Evil. Now, as many of you know, in November of 2024, it was announced that Dennis suffered a severe spinal injury which affected his diaphragm and movement below his shoulders. Dennis is obviously a legend here at Salem and in this business and in politics and in policy. And to watch Dennis Prager fight all this and fight through all this despite his injury has been inspirational and incredible. And now he has this book coming out. And I don't think Dennis is going to be able to do as much promotion on his book as he would normally be able to do. And I want to do some for him because anything Dennis Prager writes, I'm going to read. Here's a little bit of the book description. For 50 years, Dennis Prager, one of the best-known public intellectuals in the Western world, has explored the vital role Judeo-Christian values play in shaping individual lives and entire societies. In If There Is No God, he engages in provocative and sometimes heated exchanges with questioners who offer some of the greatest challenges he has faced concerning how one determines good and evil and why one's feelings can be life-enhancing yet morally unimportant. If God exists, why doesn't he punish the unjust? Why does he allow the innocent to suffer? How can religion better the human condition when so many of the religious are so often immoral? These timeless questions are in urgent need of answers. The reader need not be religious or even believe in God to find the arguments and debates in this book compelling and meaningful. All you need to do is appreciate the ideas of Dennis Prager and the reasoning that he brings to these conversations. This book is thought-provoking, it is important, it is accessible for the devout and the skeptic. In If There Is No God, you'll find a guide for anyone seeking clarity in a morally troubled age. Again, coming out tomorrow. You can buy it tomorrow. The latest book from our friend here at Salem, Dennis Prager. It is called If There Is No God. You can get it anywhere that you purchase your books. We're going to take a break. When we come back, last week, the Vanderbilt University Medical Center has announced they are no longer offering gender-affirming surgeries. This news continues to cascade. We'll have a guest who has some comments on all of this. By the way, none of this would be happening if Donald Trump had not won election in 2024. It's Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings. You're listening to us on Salem. Stay with us.
The man who made CNN safe for conservatives again. Here's Scott Jennings.
It is Monday, February 23rd. Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings broadcasting today from Louisville, Kentucky. If you're up in the Northeast in this bomb cyclone, we hope you're staying safe and warm. Ian, what's the snow total up to in New York now?
We're at 20 inches in Central Park.
20 inches in Central Park, maybe getting up to 30 in New York. I know LaGuardia had a massive amount. Newark Airport, Boston is covered up. So we'll keep an eye on the weather up there in the Northeast. It is the most snow that New York has had, I think, in over 5 years. So fortunately, they have a very experienced and hands-on mayor who's out recruiting people to bring their identification in order to shovel the snow. So seems like things are going to go well for the Big Apple. Last week, patients at the Vanderbilt University Medical Center received a notification saying their healthcare system will no longer offer gender-affirming surgeries, not just for minors, but for everyone. This new position continues a major cultural shift in gender-affirming care across the country since President Trump returned to the White House. In December of last year, Health Secretary RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz, who leads Medicaid and Medicare services, announced major policy changes around hospitals that provide trans surgeries for minors, all in an effort to end these procedures. And hospitals across the country are, in fact, ending the procedures. Just last month, a detransitioner won a $2 million lawsuit against New York doctors who pushed her to get a double mastectomy. All of this comes as the American Medical Association, the nation's largest organization representing doctors, now says these transgender procedures generally should be deferred until adulthood. And the American Society of Plastic Surgeons has said that gender-related surgery should be delayed until at least age 19. From boys and girls sports to schools hiding gender identity from parents, the Trump administration is taking an axe to all of this nonsense, and people follow leadership, it seems. With us now to discuss all of this is Jim Campbell, the head of U.S. litigation for the Alliance for Defending Freedom. It is the largest legal organization focused on protecting children from gender ideology in the country. Jim has personally argued several cases in front of the Supreme Court, including last month's Title IX case. Jim Campbell, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for your time today. I want to start this interview by playing a short clip from the weekend. I get your reaction to this. It is the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. He's launching his presidential campaign, and he has appeared to make the central plank of his campaign defending child mutilation. Here's Andy Beshear in cut number 10.
I'm going to stand up against discrimination in any form, regardless of how it polls in Kentucky or anywhere else, because it's the right thing to do. So I vetoed every anti-LGBTQ bill that's come across my desk in Kentucky. I've vetoed every anti-DEI bill that's come across my desk in Kentucky. And I've done that because it's the right thing to do. And you only get so much time in this job. You ought to be doing the right thing every time.
Jim, it seems like our culture is going one direction, turning away from these transgender surgeries, at least for minors, and Andy Beshear is running headlong into the issue anyway as he launches a presidential campaign. Why do you think politicians like Andy Beshear continue to do this despite all of the increased warnings from medical associations and other people?
I think people like the governor haven't gotten the message, the common sense message that biological reality is what we should be operating consistent with. The science shows us that kids do best when they're struggling with these issues of gender confusion, when they're allowed to talk through it and they're explore their feelings, not when they're pumped full of drugs and exposed to surgeries that are wholly unnecessary.
Jim, during the Biden administration, medical professionals and government officials acted as though all the science behind this so-called gender-affirming care was settled. But now we're shifting away from that. People are saying what folks like you always knew to be true. What do you think is behind this dramatic shift away from the trans cult, the trans ideology?
The science is getting so strong on our side that they can't ignore it anymore. And so if you look in 2024, the Cass review came out of the UK, and the Cass review recognized that there are no good studies showing that leading kids down a path of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones actually helps them. In fact, what it does is it leads them into permanent physical changes that are wholly necessary. It leads them down a path that exposes them to lots of physical changes that are harmful for their bodies. And what kids need instead is an opportunity to talk about their feelings, explore these issues. And what we know from the science is that nearly 90% of kids that struggle with these issues before puberty will work their way through it if they're just given the opportunity. And what they don't need are politicians pushing them down the path of so-called gender transition.
Jim, there were a lot of people in American life, some were doctors, some were politicians, people with fancy titles who were pushing this ideology, pushing children to get these surgeries. Do you think there is going to be more accountability, any accountability for the people who push this on the children of the United States of America?
Absolutely, and we're already seeing it. You mentioned at the outset that there was a verdict out of New York late in January, and that verdict found that there needed to be $2 million paid by a psychologist and a surgeon that led a 16-year-old down the path of a surgery that was unnecessary, that disfigured her body, when what she needed was someone to listen to her, someone to talk to her, and someone to explore the confusion that she was experiencing.
On the Vanderbilt decision, what do you think ultimately pushed them over the edge? Is it just the weight of the science, as you mentioned? Is it people contacting them? Is it a combination of things? What got a university hospital like Vanderbilt to the major announcement they made last week?
I think it's a number of things. You recognize that many professional associations came out in the last few weeks and clarified that they don't think it's consistent with the standard of care to perform these kinds of surgeries on young people. But in addition to that, you have the current administration that's made clear federal dollars are no longer going to go to these kinds of procedures and drugs. And I think that that's quite significant because whether we want to recognize it or not, the bottom line matters to a lot of people in the healthcare industry. And if they know that the money won't flow to these kinds of drugs and procedures, then they're going to be less interested in going down that road.
Talking with Jim Campbell from the Alliance for Defending Freedom here on the Scott Jennings Show. Jim, I want to play another clip for you. This is a state representative from Minnesota. Where else but Minnesota? This state representative is named Lee Fink. Lee Fink is transgender. And Lee Fink is making an argument that children must have access to pornography for educational purposes. Let's hear cut number 8.
You mentioned the Paxton case, and the AGs in many states are very clear about that. They're almost jubilant about being able to use these laws to ban young people from accessing content that could be educational if they are queer. And you're a principal, you have LGBT students in your school, and we also know that they're not receiving sex education for queer kids. We know that prurient interest could be, for many people, the very existence of transgender kids. More and more people are saying there simply are no transgender kids.
Jim, when you hear a statement like this from a state rep arguing for children to have access to pornographic websites, how shocked are you by this?
I am shocked. I can't believe that these are the types of things that politicians are worried about. What we need is our kids to be educated well. We need our kids to be helped when they're struggling with issues, but to lead them down the path of dangerous and destructive materials is not something that they need to be exposed to. The fact that this is the path forward for some politicians, it really does make me worry about the future of our country. But again, the good news is that the tide is turning on a lot of these things. The everyday average American sees that what kids need is good education, not this kind of sideshow in public discussion and doctrine.
Jim, you're with an organization called the Alliance for Defending Freedom, and you're currently waiting to see if the Supreme Court will pick up your case regarding preventing schools from hiding students transitioning from their parents. Do you think they will take up the case? And if they do, what do you expect that outcome to be?
We're very confident that the Supreme Court will take up this issue. 4 of the Supreme Court justices have already recognized that this is an important question that the court needs to decide. We can't have public schools around the country that are leading kids down the path of transition and not even telling their parents what's going on. That's unacceptable. What we need is for the Supreme Court to look at this issue, to uphold the rights of parents to direct their kids' upbringing and to make sure that they're not cut out of important parts of their lives.
Jim, it strikes me that based on all the news we're getting from University of Vanderbilt Hospital, for instance, and other systems, the news we're getting on litigation, the news we're getting from medical associations, it seems to me right now that if you've been worried in this country about the direction of pushing children into these trans ideologies, if you've been worried about what's going on in schools, you actually have momentum to do something about it. What would you recommend to the average parent, the average person out there? How can they get involved? If this is something that they have been worried about, what would you say to them? What should they do? What can an average person, how can they lend their voice to this debate?
Yeah, I would say speak up and show up. So speak up in just everyday average conversations. Let people know what your views are on these issues. Show up at school board meetings when these kinds of topics are discussed and make sure people know what your views are. And then I would also say support organizations that are engaged on this issue. Organizations like ours at Alliance Defending Freedom, we're committed to making sure that biological truth is proclaimed on these issues and that everyone knows that this gender ideology is a dead-end path. What we need are real solutions for kids struggling with issues. We need truth, we need biological reality, and that's what we're committed to at Alliance Defending Freedom.
God-given, immutable truth when it comes to gender. That's what you're going to get out of the Alliance for Defending Freedom. Jim Campbell, thanks for coming on, and we look forward to checking in with you in the future as some of these cases move forward. Appreciate your time today, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Jim. Let's have a quick word from Done with Debt. And here's why I want to tell you about it, because I know some of you out there are stressed about getting out of debt. And if you are, you need to listen to this. Done with Debt is one of the best organizations that we have ever seen at navigating debt relief. In fact, last year they did over $102 million in debt relief for our listeners and other customers. Done with Debt will navigate this for you, this debt relief process, so that you can keep more of your paycheck every month. They follow all the rules. They follow all the regulations. They have all the experts. It's complicated, and that's why you get experts involved in a complicated situation like the people that you'll find with Done with Debt. Don't wait for these lenders to tighten up their policies. This might be the window for you right now. Call up Done with Debt. Visit their website, donewithdebt.com. That's where you really should go, and then you can talk with a debt specialist. It's free. It only takes a few minutes. Go to donewithdebt.com. If you have this pressure in your life, you will not regret it. We'll take a break. When we come back, talking a little hockey and Olympics here on the Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott Jennings.
I will tell you the definition of never back down. The USA hockey teams at the Winter Olympics. That's who would never back down. I have to finish the show today highlighting these incredible wins by the USA men's and women's hockey teams at the Olympics. Now, it wasn't just great to beat Canada at their own national sport, although that is pretty awesome. And it wasn't just great to win the gold medal in hockey for the first time in 46 years, the Miracle on Ice. I want to highlight the incredible reaction from the players afterwards. These guys could not have been more proud to represent the United States of America. You had all these journalists over there trying to get American athletes to crap upon the United States. And by the way, some took the bait, shamefully. Not the hockey guys. Here's the hero, Jack Hughes. This is the guy who got his teeth knocked out and scored the game-winning goal. We're so proud to be American. Amen, Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes got his teeth knocked out. He's bleeding. And he scores the game-winning goal in sudden death overtime, taking away the gold medal from Canada. By the way, Jack Hughes has also taken away their hot chicks. He dates Tate McRae, I'm told, who's Canadian. You can look it up. We took their gold. We took their hot chicks. It's a good day to be an American, as evidenced by the words of Jack Hughes. I love these celebrations. I love these interviews. These guys were unabashedly pro-America. They talked about wearing our colors and our crest with honor, about playing for that flag on those jerseys. If you watch the ceremony where they were getting their medals and listening to the national anthem, you could see the emotion. They were not embarrassed about their patriotism. They had no hesitation about saying, I love my country. I love the United States of America. These young men understood that representing America on the international stage is a privilege, and they played like it, and they acted like it. We live in a country right now full of people who are being unabashed in their hatred of America. They're trying to get other people to join them. They want you to think America's rotten at the core, that America must be apologized for by anyone on the international stage or in politics or in culture, anywhere. They want you to constantly apologize for this or that. These hockey guys apologize for nothing. They say, I'm proud to be an American. Felt like all the athletes were just being goaded and baited constantly. Tell us how bad it is to have to wear the stars and stripes, the red, white, and blue here in Italy. Tell us how embarrassed you are. These journalists, these sports journalists, by the way, ridiculous. But not Jack Hughes, not the American hockey team. They wouldn't do it. They stood up for you. They stood up for us. So I just want to say my hat is off. Our hats here at the Scott Jennings Show are off. The Team USA, gritty win, unapologetic patriotism. It was a great day for American hockey. And a great reminder that sometimes the simplest kind of pride in your country, is still the very best kind. We're done for the day. I'll be broadcasting this show tomorrow from Saginaw, Michigan, and we'll be covering the President's State of the Union. We'll have that tomorrow and reaction on Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. Common sense for the American people. See ya.